Welcome to Mike on Politics. Today we're talking about critical thinking and how to assess different information that you come across. So the first thing I'd like to say about watching things on the internet is don't believe everything you read and everything you see. So what is critical thinking? There's a lot of social media use today, obviously, and a lot of stuff coming through, fact versus fiction. We've got deep fakes. Artificial intelligence is now coming through with all sorts of real fakes, not better than deep fakes. We've got voice, you can steal people's voices in real time. You can steal people's faces. That's only going to get better. That's going to come a long way in a short space of time. So first you need to be able to assess and sort information, and we're going to start with the best stuff and work our way down. So scientific fact, obviously hopefully you've been into a science class and seen scientific fact. So we'll start there. Your teachers will do you a scientific experiment that will always show the same result. So the iodine clock experiment, where they put different mixtures in, and the iodine after time turns around. The reason they can do that is it's scientific fact. Every time it's the same thing. It's always going to show. Timing might be slightly off depending on the mixture, but it's always going to give a great result. And in following with that, other facts. The Earth is a sphere. It's actually an oblate spheroid, and it's not flat. So I think that goes without saying, but there's a lot of flat earthers out there, and I disagree with you. So the Earth is approximately 4.5 billion years old, and once again, creationists will tell you it's 6,000 years old. So that's really difficult if you've been brought up being told this mistruth as fact your whole life, and then we've had carbon dating, and the zircons from Western Australia, Jack's Hills, return an age of 4.4 billion years old from carbon dating. So you have to be able to you have to be able to assess information as true or fact. Then we go down from scientific fact, published research from universities, doctoral thesis, science magazines. This stuff's been researched, it's been peer reviewed, it's been published as fact or as best information at the time. And the beauty of that type of research is when there's better research or more information comes out, it adds on to it. So the information's only as good as what we know at that time. And then we've got qualified opinion. Once again, published books by qualified people, reputable newspapers and news media, and podcasts by reputable sources. So let's see if we can become one of those. But just here, reputable newspapers and news media, you're welcome to review your own. So just say never take my word for anything. Have a look yourself. But in the US, you've got the Associated Press, Reuters, BBC, Bloomberg, NPR. So these are centralist newspapers or media organisations that are trying to, provide an honest opinion, and that's not always the case with media outlets. So we'll have a look at that as well. Then we drop down into the murky world of opinion, social media and podcasts. Obviously, hard to quantify or qualify the quality of that information, whether it's opinion, is it fact-based opinion. and who are the people that they're bringing on or talking to. Where's that coming from? And then we've got, half truths. So half truth is a statement that conveys only part of the truth, especially one used deliberately in order to mislead someone. So you're getting quite a bit of that cutting through at the moment, and we'll go into some of the reasons behind that later on. Biased media. So in the USA in 1987, the FCC abolished the fairness doctrine, which I wish that could come back. And so the fairness doctrine, they had to air contrasting views on a subject. So now they don't. Since 1987 in the US, you can have biased media, and there are biased media on both sides. So you've got to watch. If you're just absorbing biased media the whole time, you're getting a biased narrative. So you need to be able to really check the quality of the information coming through. What's their angle? Who's paying them? What's going on here? And that's the creation of biased, or sometimes called partisan media, only telling one side of the story. So, that's obviously quite dangerous. We also have false narrative, widely accepted belief that is presented as the truth, but is actually based on incorrect or incomplete information, often leading to misunderstandings, distorted views of reality, and hindered progress. So that's, once again, coming through a lot, especially if you've got a biased media where you're allowed, where they'll carry on that false narrative. Persuasive and bias-based information to skew opinion. Biased podcasts. So, and sometimes, there'll be podcasts that say an ounce of truth and then quite a lot of bias in between. It's like the old broken clock's right twice a day. So they'll pick up a little bit of truth, and so you say, oh yeah, that's the truth, and then the rest of it is false or misleading. So you've got to really be careful. Social media posts, and I'll go into this at the end. There are countries, organizations, whatever you want to say, actively trying to bias our social media, the free press and free. And that's things like propaganda, information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a particular cause, doctrine, or point of view. So I call that lies purporting to be the truth. So propaganda has been used by countries to sway their people and other people, and there's plenty of examples of that over the year. Gaslighting, the psychologically manipulating someone into questioning their own sanity, memory, or powers of reasoning. So that's probably more dangerous on a personal level, where people are knowingly purporting misinformation, telling you information you know to be untrue to doubt yourself. So that might be spreading lies about someone, or half-truths or mistruths, or you having seen something and them telling you over and over and over that you're wrong, and that can be very dangerous as well. And then projection. Projection is a psychological defense mechanism where individuals attribute their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or motives onto another person. So that probably comes back through your gaslighting and I guess propaganda. It's all a little bit similar there. So I guess just if we just roll back up through that, we've got from the hierarchy, we've got scientific facts, stuff that's always going to be the same, published research, going in qualified opinion by qualified people, know their stuff, going down into this murkier, social media type fact, fact from the toilet, and then half-truths, false narratives, propaganda, all the way down. So you've got to be able to work out where it's coming from and how accurate it is. So research and supporting arguments. So once again, we've got research and supporting arguments. Research, critical thinking, assessment, analysis, justification, and referencing are essential to a university education. So I'm not obviously trying to put anyone down, but going through a university type curriculum, you can't be just bringing in information that's not referenced. It's not references, citations, but you have to go through the research of that, through the critical thinking, the assessment, the analysis, justification, referencing are essential to a university education and a degree. Obviously, some university courses are more, say, engineering type or different things, but they have to go through that critical thinking or critical assessment. So university research requirement for critical thinking, so research information from many sources. University libraries are a great wealth of knowledge. Just years and years and years of published fact and built up the knowledge in those people. I prefer to AI personally. So analyze the information, reference and citation, create a reasoned argument, justification, and a conclusion. So that's that critical thinking is important, and that's why universities or education is vitally important, but also that higher education where with, say, a trade school or something where you're just learning a trade, in other parts when you go onto those less physical acts and into more higher education, and you need to start justifying and working through an answer. And then we've got social media information. So it's not referenced, it's likely biased. Are they selling a product? Is there a false narrative to support a line of argument? And there are groups trying to destabilize the democratic world. So bot farms and propaganda, which I will touch on at the end. So not everything we're seeing on social media, and because it's so free and open, it's not vetted, and it can be biased, and it can have a narrative, and people have agendas, so just be careful of how you research and your supporting arguments. So let's look at bias and be aware of your own bias. So if you're researching something, are you looking for things to justify why you're right, or are you looking at things through an open mind? Hey, I'm going to look at all this information, I'm going to work through it, and then I'm going to come to a conclusion. Or have you already got a conclusion and you want to find some information to support you? So that's obviously scary. So be aware of your own bias. Are you looking for information to support your ideas? Bias or potentially prejudice. There's a lot of political anger at the moment based on getting people to focus on prejudice and actually not look at the facts of the information. So are you looking at information with an open mind before making a decision? And then also, really importantly, be prepared to change your mind based on new facts. So you can read a book and you can think, yeah, I know everything on the subject. I'm now, I know it all. And then you have to be able to be prepared to read a second book. And if it counters that one, then you need to start looking at and assessing that information and weighing it up and mulling it over, I guess. Cross verify information, do your own research, find reliable, reputable sources, and have an open mind. That's probably the most important there. And the ability to agree to disagree. So this is difficult when you're dealing with people who are very strongly opinionated about something, and you obviously don't want to offend them. There's a lot of keyboard warriors out there on the internet and different bits and pieces. Have they got a bias? Have they got a prejudice that they're trying to find a reason to justify their argument? Can they look at things objectively? So, what can you do here? If you hear someone spouting poorly referenced or false data, what can you do? So, say I disagree with you. I've looked into this and I think your research is biased. Be prepared to review any actual facts they provide, but not hearsay, biased data. You need to be able to say, yep, I'll look at your information, but you need to show me where it's sourced from. If it's sourced from a podcast or something and that person's doing something else, that's not the same as independent media or university research. You need to be able to assess the quality of where they're getting their information from and where you're getting your information from. And here, say, hey, we should agree to disagree. If you can't deal, if you know what I mean. So, sorry, I disagree with you fundamentally on the subject. Let's agree to disagree. Especially if it's at Christmas or something, and you still want to be friendly with that person, but you are allowed to have a difference of opinion. And I would say be strong to your morals and be strong to your sense of right and wrong. And what if you hear someone telling lies about someone on purpose? Gaslighting, false narrative, half truths. So misinformation and propaganda, and you get a bit of that at high schools and different things like that as well. So how do you deal with those instances? There might be other complex family or friend networks, or people telling lies or mistruths, etc. So I would I would speak up for the truth. If they're saying in a group situation a mistruth that to be incorrect, you should make them feel bad for lying, and you shouldn't feel bad for telling the truth. So if you know a truth, or someone's saying something and you say, well, I've never seen that, say, hey, I've spent a lot of time with that person and I've never seen that kind of behavior. Where are you getting this from? And so I'll bring up old Ron Burgundy here, and the old, I don't believe you. So if people are telling a false narrative and they can't back it up, or it's whatever, so be firm to your beliefs and about what you think is right and wrong, and be a keeper of the truth. And as I used to tell my children, the truth will set you free. So make sure that you are a keeper of the truth. You're honest to yourself. Telling lies, being involved in lies, trying to keep lies, you've got to tell more lies to more lies. So we don't want to be in that situation. And then this is actually really concerning, and this is happening in the world, and it is scary. And if you look at some of the incremental changes over the last 30 or 40 years, sort of post-Cold War, this stuff is coming through. And now with social media, it's so cheap to put out lies and propaganda. So we'll just go over a little bit of that on a global scale. And, old Mr. Trump, loves the poorly educated. So, said it in his own words. I love the poorly educated. So, and that's because people haven't been taught to think critically. Um, um, the US has biased media, and it's allowed to be biased. So, if you're just being fed biased media day in and day out, of course you're going to of course you're going to skew in a particular direction. Um, so not properly referenced information. Um, and then we also have him defunding the universities, and they are opposed to critical thinkers. So we've been through this, defunding universities in a country that has relied on patents and the amount of money that the USA has made from university research and patents and the growth of computers and technology and the amount of money that that country has made off those to then defund those universities is just absolutely counterintuitive to making America great again. It's so opposed to critical thinkers, and that's what we're trying to talk about here is where the information's coming in. And as I say, even my information, go research it yourself. Have a look at where that's coming from, and determine for yourself what is good information and what is not. And so back to old mate Mr. Trump. So he's in his first term, he told 30,000 plus lies or false or misleading statements and counting, boldly stating misleading information as fact. And in my mind, one lie is too many. So we're well over the counter there. We've got gaslighting, same thing, telling known lies as the truth, and start not being able to believe yourself. Someone just telling you lies over and over and over again, aggressively, and saying it so strongly as fact when you know it's not true. And back to social media, because obviously this is is part of this. Authoritarian regimes are actively trying to weaken democracy. So as a combined group, say the EU is very powerful. It's got GDP similar to the United States of America. It's the rule-based order of law. It signs up to all the international conventions. But broken apart as 30, 40, 50 small countries, they're all quite vulnerable and quite weak, and hence alliances like NATO, strength in numbers, strength, of countries that don't want war, that want to live prosperously. So there are regimes trying to weaken democracy, and social media is a massive push there. So we'll just have a quick look at who and why. So men in power or people in power, once they get it, they don't like to give it away. So let's just have a look here, and we'll probably on some other things. I'll go into the democracy index. So see if I can just show that a little bit clearer. And we'll just pause here and have a bit of a look at the different colors. So obviously the darker the blue, up and through here, up and through Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, have have full democracies. We currently have the United States and South America as flawed democracies, and same as India and some places in Europe. And then we get hybrid regimes, which in through here in Africa, a little bit in South America, and then we get authoritarian regimes. So these are places where few people have the power, and they don't want to let it go. And ideally, if they could expand their zone of influence over more and more places, they probably would like that. So things like hybrid warfare, we now have China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, um, called the Axis of Autocracies. They are actively working together to bring about a multipolar world and to challenge Western influence. So Western influence is deemed America and Europe. So effectively we've got these democracies here in the West, and they are trying to bring about a multipolar world. Well, I personally would rather be in a blue zone than in a red zone. Um, so they're all authoritarian regimes. They have no free and fair elections, no freedom of the press, and no freedom of speech. Um, and so the rules-based order, which is effectively the United Nations, etc., was founded after World War II to create a rule-based order, and it's the global framework established after World War II based on liberal principles, including national sovereignty, peaceful dispute resolution, democracy, and economic openness. So, um, national sovereignty, obviously, there are wars and breaches, and even the West has been guilty of breaching this in the past. So I'm not saying everyone's perfect, but peaceful dispute resolution, democracy obviously is a big one for me personally, and economic openness. But if you're economically open with these countries who are actively working against you, that can cause some of the issues that we've got in geopolitics at the moment. Disinformation and active measures. Disinformation has been a pillar of Russian strategy since the Cold War, with significant time and treasure spent on disinformation relative to other forms of espionage. So, journalist Mark Hollingsworth devotes a chapter to the KGB's use of disinformation in his book, Agents of Influence, How the KGB Subverted Western Democracies. And there's some good documentaries on that. There's one called Active Measures, which I personally like, and it goes into, in this, so many news articles of people being arrested and actual fact about that. So, but he cites a former KGB disinformation chief who claimed the KGB spent around 25% of its budget on traditional espionage and spending the remainder on a slow process focusing on what we called ideological subversion or active measures. So active measures, and they are social media campaigns. So a way that they do that, so you've got a bot farm and you'll join your local community group, so the bot will be there and it'll befriend someone you know. And so once you see that someone you know has put something on social media, oh, Jan down the road knows that person, well, that person must know some good information, but it's actually misinformation. But because you've seen it through a known associate, lowers your guard as to the validity of that information. So there are active measures in there trying to challenge democracy, challenge elections. So you must be aware that when you're looking at information, is what's it doing? So here's an example of a little bot farm, but I'm sure some there. So that's fake posts and comments on social media were allegedly published from ordinary citizens of Ukraine. Bot farm had at least 4,000 fake accounts. For each bot created, the offenders received a payment. So there are active measures to, it's cheaper to skew an election than it is to invade a country, and far better result for the puppet government. And so here it's cheaper to skew an election than to fight a war. And back to those active measures. And democracy's biggest weakness is its greatest strength. So each person is worth one vote. And even the other week in the Moldova election, there were concerns about vote buying, where people pay them 20 euros, buy their vote for them. Each person is worth one vote. Turning people against each other rather than to these external threats. So turning the democratic population on itself, arguing amongst itself. Um, so you're getting far right or far left extreme groups, wanting to lessen sanctions on the countries above, or install puppet governments, or get favourable terms. So you have to be aware that these active measures are out there. There is propaganda. There is people actively trying to, um, you know, destroy democracy, or put themselves in power, or give themselves more influence. So that's really scary, and hence, I think that's just a good place to finish there. So, yeah, going back, what's critical thinking? And yeah, be careful of bias, but the most important thing is check your facts. Where are the facts coming from? Um, yeah, are they valid? So, if you like this, please share and subscribe. I will do more on various topics that are interesting to me. And yeah, remember, don't believe everything that you read or see.